Hi, this is your instructor, Gayana Torresyan. We've met before in our introduction section, and today I would like to summarize some of the work that we've done with chapters 1, 2, and 3, and connect them to the work that you've been doing, the voicers that we have graded. I just want to bring up some of my comments that I thought would be good to share with everyone. First of all, let's review the purpose of writing and rewriting news scripts, and later we will write public service announcements, commercials for use in various media. When the media is read and spoken, rather than read from a piece of paper, from a page, or even from a website, it sounds and feels different. First of all, if you try and read something out loud, you'll notice that it takes much longer to pronounce words than to skim them with your eyes. That means that if we're going to write something for the ear, for listening, it needs to be much briefer, much shorter. So what does the audience need in this case? The beginning of chapter 1 is to condense the information into a form that's easy to deliver, easy to read, because there is a common rule that what people see, that's what they say when they're in front of a microphone, like me right now at this moment. I'm speaking without a script, but if I had a script, I would mechanically read whatever I saw, because right now, I must tell you, there is really not much time to think and interpret things, especially if you're not the one who wrote the script. Even if you did write it on your own, it is still a challenge to interpret complex words, signs, a slash, and even a comma. So what your audience needs is very concise, precise, brief information that's easy to digest, while the audience member, the listener, or maybe in television, the viewer who's not doing the viewing as their first activity, but something as a background activity, that they don't have to concentrate on it. They can just have it in the background, get the meaning while focusing on the road, focusing on their meal preparation or some other things that they're doing while listening or consuming media news. So nowadays, what would be those forms? Back in the 20th century, it would have been radio, television. Now we will say podcasts are a very popular way of delivering information. And podcasts can have long formats and short formats. If you're listening to a short puzzle or short, informative, fun pieces, you prefer them to be very precise and easy to understand. But there are cases when people would travel long distances, commute for hours, and listen to podcasts or ebooks as they do. In that case, it would actually be okay to have longer formats, but this course is not about that. This is not about an audiobook. Yeah, I should have said audiobook rather than ebook, but you understand that the delivery mode is usually digital. So we're focusing on short format, easy to deliver, easy to understand, news stories, and later public service announcements, commercials, entire newscasts that we would consume without making too much of an effort. So that dictates a few very basic rules. First of all, we would say that punctuation is important to allow the reader or ourselves, while reading our own script, to pause and take a breather when we need to take one breath instead of taking a full stop. We indicate that with 3 dots instead of a comma. That means that the 3 dots would be more visible from a little bit of a distance, and we will be prepared with our gaze to actually take a breath and then move on. Whereas if we put a comma, it might come very unexpectedly, because it's not very visible. It would just catch us by surprise, and we may not be able to enunciate the comma. If we were in a public speaking class, we would say that you should always prepare and practice the reading, but right now we're focusing on the writing aspect of this. So to help the reader, we need to write well. And good punctuation is one way of writing well. So we agreed that instead of putting commas, which we need to use properly, I noticed in some of your works that the commas were either missing or misplaced or fewer than they needed to be. Please pay attention to the grammar rules and put the commas, turn them into ellipses where they need to be. The second punctuation comment that I wanted to make is that we do not use quotation marks. If I were looking at you and doing like this, quotation marks, this would be like two bunnies, right? Quote unquote. So I'm showing you two bunnies with my hands. When you're driving 75 miles per hour on a highway, I cannot show you the bunnies. All I can say is quote, indulgent, end quote, or something to indicate that the word is not yours, it's someone else's. You don't want to own it, you want to attribute it to someone else. And so in very rare cases, we might use quote unquote or just quote as a way of bringing up someone else's words. However, titles and headlines, not headlines, titles and names of things that need to be quoted, sometimes we bend that rule a little bit just to indicate that it's a title, it's a name of a book, for example. And there are ways in usual typing we would use italics, but sometimes if it's just a title, putting quotes would be acceptable, and I think that's what I commented on one of your works. In other cases, when it's just direct speech from some other person, we do not use them simply. We just say, police say the prisoner will be released tomorrow. Just attribute it to police or the other sources and put it in narrative form rather than putting it in quotation marks and direct speech. The other rule that's in the book is not to use passive voice, because that shifts the responsibility from the person or the group of people or the party, the organization who actually did whatever they did, conducted the action, to make it very passive, as in the ball was kicked. The ball cannot get kicked by itself. The car was driven, the car cannot, well, now it can, we know self-driving cars, but in normal circumstances, someone actually happens to be behind that act. So the driver of the car, the person who drove the car, we cannot say that the car was driven because it's very indirect. So we prefer direct speech. We prefer short speech. Our sentences and words need to be short and concrete, and in many cases, powerful, punchy. Nouns and verbs need to be convenient, need to be everyday nouns and verbs that we use, and don't be afraid of using casual language without slipping into jargon or street talk or inappropriate language or even slang. We don't like those things because they're not easily understood by all, but rather stick with the well-known forms such as get, give, win, instead of acquire, assign, or any other complicated, convoluted word that you might find in official writing, especially bureaucratic writing. So we said about active voice, passive voice, good transparent writing. Most of you understood that we need to double space and use all caps to make it easy to read. Double spacing allows me to read your work better, and I would strongly suggest using word format rather than anything else, because it allows me to give you the written feedback that you deserve, and also track my changes on a Word document. And some people still don't know how to submit their work in the proper column, in the proper part of the screen. If you need assistance, you can call IT or someone else who can tutor you in that. I am seeing things in a different way. From my perspective, my screen is a little different than yours, so I'm not the best person to help you with that. But if you need assistance using Blackboard, I think you can get a little bit of training with IT, TLTC. But please try. You're smarter than that. You should not submit your written assignment in the column where comments should go. That makes it much more difficult and does not allow you to earn the good grades that you really should be earning. Okay, so to summarize, our language needs to be transparent, punchy, clear, easy to understand as a background activity rather than making people stop and think. And for that matter, by the way, the book also says don't put nested words, sentences inside another sentence. Don't start with a delay, giving a little bit of introduction and then going to the main point. My suggestion, my advice is to go directly into the main topic, the main point of your sentence. Build your sentences straightforward without convoluting them. And that way you can communicate your message very effectively. Okay, so I will stop this portion of our conversation here. And the next one will be a little bit of talk about research, about interviewing. And then we'll continue with PSAs. Talk to you soon.